The world ended quietly, no explosions, no warnings, just an icy stillness that swallowed everything. Overnight, the continent transformed into a frozen graveyard. Streets once filled with laughter turned into white corridors of silence. Houses, cars, entire cities were buried under a suffocating layer of frost, so cold it cracked steel like brittle glass. People woke to windows sealed shut by ice, thicker than their arms, and within minutes, the temperature plummeted below anything humanity had ever measured. Kai Arden jolted awake in his cramped apartment, breath fogging instantly, the air sharp enough to burn his lungs. The heater displayed nothing but a dead black screen. He tried the lights, nothing, not even a flicker. When he touched the wall, frost crawled along his fingertips like living veins. What the hell? He layered himself in every coat he owned, but the cold pierced through everything. In the streets, he saw neighbors pounding uselessly on frozen doors, crying for help as their breath crystallized. Power stations had collapsed. Grids were fried. Every generator, every heating system, dead. The eternal winter had erased the world's defenses in a single night. People ran in panic, slipping on ice that spread faster than they could flee. Screams echoed until the sound faded into a dreadful quiet, the kind that settles when hope dies. Kai forced himself to move, scavenging anything that could burn, anything that might give him another hour of life. But even fire behaved strangely. The flames burned blue and weak, offering almost no warmth. He knew then that normal survival was impossible. He wasn't strong. He wasn't a hero. Kai Arden was a low-ranking mechanic, living paycheck to paycheck. And now, in a frozen apocalypse, he was as helpless as everyone else, or so he thought. While searching the outskirts of town, a memory flickered his father's ramblings about a last resort, a buried secret no one must ever find. Kai had always dismissed it as paranoia, but desperation makes a man revisit every possibility. Stumbling through knee-deep snow, he found the old workshop where his father used to disappear for hours. Beneath the floorboards was a latch frozen stiff. He bashed it with a metal pipe until it cracked open, revealing a dark passageway leading underground. The moment he touched the ladder, something in the metal reacted to him, warming under his skin, pulsing faintly. His breath trembled. "Dad, what did you build?" As he descended, sensors lit up along the walls, scanning him in gentle waves. They hummed, almost welcoming him. At the bottom stood a sealed bunker door, carved with his father's insignia. And as soon as Kai's hand brushed the panel, it glowed red, then green. Access granted. Identity confirmed. Arden bloodline. The door unsealed with a hiss of warm air. Kai staggered inside and froze again, but for a different reason. The bunker was alive, fully lit, heated, self-sustaining. A pocket of warmth untouched by the eternal winter outside. He stepped forward, feeling heat on his skin for the first time since the world froze. Tears burned his eyes instantly, because the warmth felt unreal, like stepping into a memory. This shouldn't exist," he whispered, voice breaking. Holographic screens flickered on, one after another. His father's voice, pre-recorded, echoed through the chamber. "Kai, if you're hearing this, the world is dying, and only you can survive what's coming." Kai's knees weakened as the truth sank in. In a world where every human was freezing to death, where cities became tombs beneath endless frost, where survival was a privilege no one had, Kai Arden alone had shelter, had warmth, had life. He wasn't chosen by destiny. He wasn't born special. He simply had a father who saw the apocalypse coming and left him the only refuge left on Earth. Kai stared at the sealed door behind him, knowing millions outside had no chance. And for the first time in his life, the mechanic with no power realized something terrifying. He was the last human with a place to survive. And that meant the fate of everyone else might depend on him. The warmth of the bunker felt like a dream Kai feared he would wake from. After hours in the deadly cold, stepping into that underground sanctuary was like stepping back into life itself. But the deeper he explored, the more he realized this place wasn't a simple shelter. It was something ancient, powerful, and far beyond anything humanity had ever built. The walls hummed with a faint golden glow, pulsing like a heartbeat. Strange runes, geometric and beautifully precise, lined the metal surfaces, shifting patterns as if reacting to his presence. Kai reached out and brushed his fingertips against one. The entire room lit up. A circular console unfolded from the floor like a blooming flower, holographic panels spinning to life. He stumbled back as symbols rearranged themselves into recognizable words. Solaris Core Technology Primary System online. Welcome. Ardent successor. Huh. Solaris. Core? Kai whispered, heart pounding. It was a name he had only ever heard in old tech myths, stories of a lost civilization that harnessed the sun itself while the rest of humanity still fought over coal. He never thought it was real. But then, the console projected something else. Blueprints, massive ones. The bunker's layout appeared, then expanded outward, showing potential chambers, weapon systems, thermal generators, and even energy shields, strong enough to withstand a collapsing skyscraper. This place can build all of that? He breathed. Another message appeared. Upgrades locked, authorization required. Access granted via bloodline match. Panels flashed. Locks fell away. The system opened itself fully because of him. Kai swallowed hard. Dad, what were you preparing for? He explored the interface with trembling hands. One section showed the Solaris core itself, a miniature sun suspended within a containment ring. Eternal warmth. Infinite power. Enough energy to keep a small city alive, or burn one to ashes. But the next tab nearly made him drop to his knees. Footage. From outside the bunker, the cameras showed the surface in horrifying clarity. Frost creeping over streets, cars frozen mid-turn, people collapsing as ice crawled over their skin, crystallizing their tears before they could hit the ground. And in the haze of white, something moved. A mist, swirling unnaturally, drifting with intent, like a predator hunting in silence. As it passed over the camera, the feed froze solid literally before shattering into static. Kai stepped back, breath thin. That thing is killing everything. The realization punched him harder than the cold ever had. The eternal winter wasn't random. It wasn't a natural disaster. Something intelligent, something engineered, was rewriting the world into a frozen wasteland, and he was hiding in the only place built to survive it. A heavy weight settled in his chest. Outside that steel door, people were dying in minutes, and he had the power to save them. But he also knew the brutal truth. If he opened the bunker too often, the warmth would leak, the core would destabilize, and the mist might find him. His father had designed this shelter for one person. Only one. Kai clenched his fists, watching the frost swallow the last flicker of life on the camera feed. I can't save everyone, he whispered, voice cracking. But I'll save who I can. He activated the bunker's expansion sequence. Walls shifted. Floors realigned. The system responded eagerly to his command. Structural growth initiated. Solaris barrier generator online. Warm light bathed him as the bunker prepared to evolve. Kai Arden, he told himself softly. You're not just surviving anymore. He looked toward the sealed door, the last barrier between warmth and a world engineered to freeze. You're fighting back! And somewhere above, the ice mist seemed to pause, as if aware that something inside the earth had awakened. The storm outside howled like a living beast, clawing at the earth as if trying to rip the bunker open. Kai stood just beyond the reinforced steel door, hand hovering over the control panel, breath unsteady. Through the frost-blurred camera feed, he saw shapes stumbling through the blizzard figures, barely recognizable as human, wrapped in torn coats and desperation. They were coming straight toward him. His heart hammered. No, not now, not this soon. He had barely learned how the Solaris systems worked. The core was stable, but only just. Letting people in meant warmth leakage, resource strain, unpredictable behavior, and more importantly, it meant danger. Humans grew violent when cornered. In this frozen apocalypse, kindness could cost him everything. The figures collapsed against the outer gate, pounding weakly. Their voices were warped by the wind, but one cry cut through the blizzard's roar. Please, someone, anyone help. Kai's fingers tightened into a fist. He wasn't a hero. He wasn't built for responsibility. But the memory of the frozen streets outside, the bodies turned into ice sculptures. The quiet as the world died around him, it tore at something inside. He exhaled sharply and activated the perimeter shields. A golden barrier flared to life, pushing the wind back long enough to reveal them clearly. 5 survivors, barely alive. One of them, a young woman with white-tipped hair and cracked blue tattoos along her arms, lifted her head. Her lips were pale, eyes fogged with cold. But the moment she saw the Solaris emblem glowing above the door, her expression changed. Solaris? Core? She rasped. Kai froze. How did she know that name? Before he could react, her knees buckled. She collapsed into the snow as if the cold had finally stolen her last breath. Damn it, no, no, no! Kai slammed his hand onto the panel. Open! Open now! The door slid apart with a hydraulic hiss, releasing a wave of warm air. The survivors crawled toward it instinctively. Half conscious, half frozen, Kai rushed out and grabbed the fallen woman first, pulling her inside. She was frighteningly cold skin like brittle glass. The other survivors stumbled through on their own, collapsing onto the heated floor with gasps of relief. As the doors sealed shut behind them, warmth flooded the chamber once more, washing over their shaking bodies. One of the older men stared around with wide, fear-filled eyes. What? What is this place? No frost, no death. It's like the winter can't touch it. Kai avoided his gaze. It's just a bunker, nothing special. But the frostbitten woman, Lyra Selwyn, opened her eyes again, this time clearer, smarter, sharper. No, she whispered. This is Solaris tech. I recognize the runes. My master studied scraps of this before the freeze. Her trembling hand brushed the glowing console. How does someone like you have access to a mythical core? The room went silent. Kai felt tension coil in his spine. He didn't know if she was grateful, or if this revelation made him a target. Before he could answer, the lights flickered. The security sensors chimed. Warning, anomalous ice signature detected. External presence approaching. The survivors stiffened. Kai's blood ran cold. Something was watching them. Something that did not belong to the world of the living. And it had followed them here. The ground trembled before Kai even heard the growls low, distorted, vibrating through the permafrost like something ancient forcing its way into the world. He froze mid-calibration, eyes snapping to the bunker's exterior cameras. The screens flickered with static, then cleared. Shapes moved through the blizzard. Tall. Wrong. Human, but not human. Their bodies were elongated, skin stretched thin over jagged bone. Frost clung to them like armor, and where eyes should have been only hollow, glowing blue pits stared back. Lyra inhaled sharply behind him. Iceborn. Kai glanced at her. Iceborn? What are those? Not what, she whispered, voice trembling with horror. Who? They were humans once, frozen alive, until the curse twisted them into beasts. His stomach twisted. He'd seen frozen bodies in the early days of the winter, but he never imagined they could move again. The creatures crept closer, sniffing the heat leaking from the bunker's vents. Lyra clutched her frostbitten arm. They're attracted to warmth. That means Kai was already sprinting toward the control hall. They're coming for us. He slammed his hand onto the Solaris console, opening the new upgrade menu. For the past day, he'd worked non-stop studying the facility's hidden blueprints, deciphering his father's encrypted notes. And now, every hour of panic-driven effort was about to be tested. The monitors shifted into combat mode. Auto defense system online. Solaris turrets armed. Heat shock traps primed. Outside, the first Iceborn lunged at the bunker wall. The Solaris turrets whirred, then released bursts of concentrated thermal beams. The creature shrieked, steam peeling from its body, but it didn't stop. It clawed forward, shrieking as if its mind had shattered long ago. Another beast rammed the barricade, and then another. The survivors watched in terror as the walls shuddered under repeated blows. Why aren't they dying? One man yelled. They feel no pain, Lyra said grimly. That's the curse. Iceborn exist only to devour heat. They'll keep coming until either we freeze or they burn. Kai's jaw clenched. Then let's burn them. He triggered the heat shock grid. A wave of scorching air erupted from vents around the perimeter hot enough to melt steel. The nearest Iceborn collapsed, skin bubbling, bones cracking under the sudden temperature shift. But more emerged from the storm. Dozens of them, silhouettes flickering behind the snow like an army of frost wraiths. Lyra's voice trembled. They shouldn't exist in these numbers. The eternal winter is accelerating. The bunker shook again, this time harder. The beasts had gathered into a swarm, clawing and screaming as they threw themselves against the shielding. Metal groaned. Warning klaxons blared. Even the Solaris system struggled to stabilize. Kai gritted his teeth. If they breach the outer layer, we're dead. He didn't wait for a reply. He dove back to the main console and pulled up a locked subsystem, one he discovered accidentally during last night's upgrades. Solaris pulse status. Restricted. Warning. Activation may destabilize local climate. His father's voice echoed faintly from a recorded log. Never use this unless the world has already ended. Kai entered the override. Lyra's eyes widened. Kai? What are you doing? Ending this. The bunker hummed no, roared as the core awakened, golden veins of light running across the walls. The floor vibrated beneath their feet. Heat, built like a miniature sun, was being born inside the chamber. Outside, the Iceborn froze mid-attack. Their hollow eyes flickered with instinctive terror. Kai whispered, Solaris pulse. Fire. The world turned white. A colossal wave of radiant heat exploded outward from the bunker, vaporizing snow, shattering ice, and melting every Iceborn in a glowing radius. Their twisted bodies disintegrated into shimmering mist before they could even scream. Within seconds, silence. Steam drifted through the air like ghosts returning to rest. The survivors stared at Kai at the bunker with awe, replacing fear. Lyra stepped forward slowly. This shelter wasn't built to hide from the eternal winter. She placed a trembling hand on the glowing wall. It was built to fight it. Kai's breath steadied as the Solaris pulse cooled, systems rebooting one by one. For the first time, the truth sank in. This bunker wasn't just a sanctuary. It was a weapon, and something out there knew it. The moment Lyra collapsed, the shelter's warmth shivered as if even the Solaris core sensed the danger inside her. Frost crept from her fingertips, spreading across the metal floor in branching veins of ice. Her breath came out in jagged puffs, each colder than the blizzard outside. Kai dropped to his knees beside her. Lyra, hey, stay with me! But her eyes were losing color, turning pale and glassy, and every pulse of mana from her chest sent another explosive burst of frost through the bunker. Walls groaned as thin sheets of ice raced up their surfaces. The other survivors backed away in terror. She's going to freeze us alive! She's turning into an Iceborn, Kai. Get away from her. But Kai didn't move. Because beneath the frost spreading across her collarbone, he saw something glowing. Something unnatural. Something embedded inside her chest. A crystal, pale blue, pulsing weakly. Lyra choked out a whisper. Don't touch me. I can't control it. Kai's mind raced. He scanned her with the bunker's medical lens, and the hologram flashed red instantly. Frozen heart seed detected. Mana crystallization level. Critical. Host survival. Is less than 3 minutes. Kai's breath stopped. A frozen heart seed wasn't just an artifact. It was a death sentence, slow, cruel, irreversible. Once it matured, it turned the host into a living engine of frost, consuming their warmth, their mana, their humanity. Why didn't you tell me? Kai murmured, voice shaking. Lyra laughed weakly, frost forming on her lips. Would you have let me in if you knew? The ice spread faster, crawling toward the core chamber. If it reached the Solaris reactor, everything would explode in a clash of hyperheat and hyperfrost. Kai lifted her into his arms. Hold on. He sprinted toward the core's heart, the purification chamber. He had read about it only once. It wasn't designed for humans. It wasn't designed for anything alive. But it was the only thing in this frozen world that might burn the seed out before it consumed her from within. Lyra's voice quivered. Kai, don't. If it fails, the explosion will kill you. Then it won't fail. He slammed his hand onto the chamber console. Solaris purification mode engaged. Warning. High risk protocol. Living subjects may not survive. Heat flooded the room as the chamber sealed shut. Through the glass, Kai watched as Lyra was suspended in a pillar of radiant light. The frost on her skin began to crack, dripping away as steam. But then she screamed. Her body arched violently as the Solaris core burned the frozen heart seed, melting ice that had been bonded to her soul. The artifact pulsed, resisting, erupting with bitter cold so strong the glass frosted over instantly. Kai slammed his palm against the chamber. Come on, don't break, don't give up. Inside, Lyra's silhouette flickered light and shadow, fire and frost until suddenly the seed shattered in a burst of white-blue energy. The chamber dimmed, and Lyra collapsed forward, breathing. The door hissed open. Kai caught her before she hit the floor, feeling warmth, real warmth return to her skin. But it wasn't the same as before. A faint aura flickered around her fingertips. A flame that was cold. A frost that glowed like sunlight. Solar frost. A hybrid magic that shouldn't exist in nature. Lyra opened her eyes, now shimmering with golden blue light. Kai? I'm alive, he exhaled shakily. Yeah, and terrifying, she smiled weakly. Then I'll terrify whatever tries to hurt you. The other survivors watched her in awe and fear as she rose, faint solar mist swirling from her hands. And outside, the frozen world answered her awakening. The blizzard howled, The temperature plummeted even further. Iceborn screeched somewhere in the storm, as if the world itself had recognized the threat. Or a challenger. Lyra stepped beside Kai, her solar frost magic shimmering like a star trapped in snow. For warmth, for survival. I follow you now, she said softly. Kai stared at the storm building outside the bunker. Something was coming, and it had felt Lyra's rebirth. The rumors spread like wildfire, carried by trembling lips, dying campfires, and desperate hope. A warm fortress, a place untouched by the eternal winter, a shelter with heat, food, and defenses strong enough to survive the apocalypse. By the third dawn, Kai heard it too, echoing across the frozen plains like a death sentence. Because every desperate soul, every starving gang, every frost-mad cultist now marched toward his shelter. And they were coming to take it. Kai stood on the bunker's outer wall, breath fogging in the unnatural cold. The world beyond was a wasteland of jagged ice and shifting blizzards. Shadows moved in the storm, some human, some not. Lyra stepped beside him, solar frost aura glowing faintly. They're gathering, she murmured. Dozens, maybe hundreds. Kai's jaw clenched. Then, we upgrade. Again. The Solaris core hummed beneath the ground, reacting to his command. With each unlocked protocol, the shelter transformed from a bunker into a fortress. Walls expanded outward, plates unfolding like armored petals. Heating towers ignited with golden flame, cutting through the frost. New defense nodes rose from the snow sleek. Angular weapons powered by ancient Solaris tech. Solar beams charged silently, their barrels glowing brighter than the sun they had lost. Below the walls, survivors watched in awe. How does he know all this? His father must have been a genius. No, this bunker, it's something else. Kai didn't answer. He didn't tell them the truth that even he didn't fully understand the Solaris core. But right now, hesitation meant death. The storm screamed louder. And the enemy arrived. Bandits wrapped in bone armor. Mercenary regiments with stolen siege engines. Cultists chanting to the frozen mist like it was a god. All converging on the fortress. But before they could attack, the land itself betrayed them. The ice cracked open massive claws, tearing upward. Frost-born beasts erupted from beneath the snow, drawn by the warmth Kai fought so hard to maintain. They leapt on the intruders with inhuman shrieks. The bandits screamed. The cultists prayed. The mercenaries raised shields. A chaotic battlefield unfolded, humans against monsters. Blood staining the snow black. Lita swallowed hard. They're killing each other. It won't matter, Kai said. Anyone who survives will still come for us. Solar beams whirred. Kai raised his hand. Fire. A burning ray lanced through the storm, slicing an ice beast in half and vaporizing the frost around it. Shockwaves of heat rippled outward, turning the battlefield into steam and melting snow. The crowd of survivors behind Kai gasped. He saved us. He's really defending us. This man Kai, he's our leader. Kai ignored the praise. He scanned the battlefield, finding the next target. Prepare the south tower. More are coming. From below, a small child cried, clutching a melted scarf. Are we going to die? Kai knelt, offering her a steady, comforting warmth. Not if I can help it. Lyra watched him, eyes softening, her new solar frost aura shimmering like a protective halo. You're becoming more than a mechanic, she whispered. You're becoming hope. But hope was fragile, and the storm was changing. Dark clouds churned overhead, spiraling unnaturally. The temperature plummeted further beyond anything recorded since the eternal winter began. The frost on the walls thickened instantly, cracking under sudden pressure. Kai felt a shiver in the air. Not cold, malice. Something greater than beasts. Greater than bandits. Greater than the winter itself. Lyra's voice trembled. Kai. Something is coming. And in the distance, deep in the swirling blizzard, a colossal silhouette moved far too large, far too silent. Kai stepped forward, fists tightening. Then we prepare the fortress, he said softly. Because whatever that is, the real threat has finally arrived. The blizzard fell silent unnaturally, impossibly silent moments before the figure appeared. Kai felt it before he saw it. A drop in temperature so sharp it stabbed straight through the Solaris barriers. Frost crawled across the outer walls, whispering like living veins of ice. Then, it stepped out of the storm. A humanoid shape, tall and slender, carved entirely from frost so clear it looked like living crystal. Its eyes were hollow pits glowing with pale blue embers. With every movement, shards of ice cracked and reformed, like a body held together by will alone. The survivors gasped. Lyra's solar frost aura flickered violently in warning. Kai tightened his grip on the railing. What is that? The entity raised its head, if it could even be called a head, and when it spoke, its voice wasn't a voice at all. It was the sound of ice fracturing, glass breaking, a glacier shifting. Bearer of the Solaris core. The words rippled into the air, freezing the breath of anyone who heard them. A layer of frost swept across the ground, racing toward the bunker, climbing the walls like a white tide. Weapons fired instantly. Solar beams, heat pulses, incendiary rounds. Not one touched it. The beams refracted through its body like light through a prism. The heat waves froze solid midair, falling like glittering shards. This thing is immune, a survivor whispered in terror. Kai's mind raced. If this emissary had found them, then the Frozen King knew they existed. The entity took another step forward. The walls groaned, metal stiffening as frost crept through the structural joints. The Solaris core is a crime against the eternal winter. It crackled. You will return it, or be erased. Kai stepped forward, lifting his voice despite the fear tightening his throat. No, humanity needs this shelter. We need warmth to survive. The emissary tilted its crystalline head. Warmth is extinction. Winter is purity. Then it moved. A single swipe of its arm shattered the ground, sending a wave of jagged ice ripping toward the bunker. Shields flared. Alarms screamed. The entire shelter shook as if a giant had struck it. The wall dented inward snow, blasting into the corridor. Reinforce Section C, Kai shouted. Don't let it breach. The emissary raised both arms now, preparing another strike, one that would shatter the entire fortress. Until a beam of golden blue light tore across the battlefield. Lyra, her solar frost magic flared with a sound like fire roaring through snow. Her hands glowed with hybrid mana, spiraling into a lance of burning cold that she hurled directly into the emissary's chest. The creature staggered. For the first time, steam erupted where her magic clashed with its frost, swirling in a violent cyclone of opposing elements. You want him? Lyra shouted through the storm. You'll go through me first. The emissary recoiled, cracks spreading through its crystal body. It stepped back, reassembling its form. And then it pointed at Kai. The Frozen King rises. His gaze is upon you. Prepare your grave. With that, its body shattered into a storm of ice fragments, dissolving into the blizzard from which it came. Silence returned, but not peace. Kai stared at the melting cracks in the bunker wall, at the frost still eating into the metal, and at Lyra panting, trembling, her solar frost aura flickering wildly. The Frozen King had found them. The shelter wasn't just a refuge anymore. It was the front line of the war for humanity's survival. The Solaris core pulsed beneath Kai's feet, no longer a quiet hum, but a deep, resonant heartbeat echoing through the bunker's metal bones. It felt alive, a sleeping giant awakening, and the moment Kai unlocked the third-tier protocol, everything changed. The floor trembled, walls shifted like mechanical tectonics. Panels unfolded, revealing hidden machinery that hadn't seen light in centuries. The survivors stumbled back as the entire bunker expanded outward on hydraulic limbs, rising from the frozen earth like a colossal beast. What? What is happening? Someone gasped. Kai didn't answer, not yet. He watched the transformation with a mix of awe and dread. Thermal shield system activated. Solar cannons online. 7 plast. Expansion nodes deployed. Giant hexagonal plates rose around the perimeter, linking into a dome of shimmering heat energy. The air inside warmed instantly, swirling with golden particles. Massive solar cannons emerged from armored towers, rotating with precision, scanning the frozen horizon. The bunker was no longer a shelter. It was a fortress. Kai exhaled slowly. Good, we'll need this. Lyra approached, wiping sweat from her brow. Her solar frost aura reflected the golden light dancing off the newly formed shield. The survivors are looking to you, she said softly. They think this fortress can save them. Kai looked over the training grounds, survivors wielding improvised weapons, learning formations, practicing under Lyra's guidance. Even children helped reinforce storage crates or carry fuel lines. They weren't just staying alive anymore. They were preparing to fight. But as he watched them train, a knot tightened in his stomach. Because truthfully, he still didn't know the full extent of what the Solaris core could do. He returned to the command chamber, once a small control room, now a towering nexus of holographic interfaces. A blinking icon pulsed at the center. Access logs, Dr. Elias Arden. His father, Hands trembling, Kai tapped the console. Audio crackled to life, his father's voice dusty and tired. If you're hearing this, Kai, the cold era has begun, and so has the prophecy. Kai froze. The Frozen King isn't just a force of nature. He's an ancient sovereign older than the kingdoms, older than magic itself, and he will awaken when the world is weakest. Kai's breath caught in his throat. Humanity's only countermeasure is the Solaris core, and the bloodline that can unlock it fully. The hologram shifted, showing an ancient mural of a blazing fortress, standing against a godlike figure of frost. Kai whispered, "My bloodline? You must master it, expand it, and when the time comes, face him." The recording ended. Silence filled the chamber. Kai closed his eyes, fighting the swirl of fear and responsibility clawing at his mind. He hadn't asked for this. He was just a mechanic, someone who fixed broken heaters and patched up machinery. How could he fight something that froze continents with a whisper? Footsteps approached. Lyra stood behind him, her gaze steady, even gentle. "What did you learn?" Kai turned toward her with a shaky breath. The Solaris core wasn't made to save humanity. It was made to fight the Frozen King. Lyra stepped closer, resting a warm hand over his. "Then we'll fight him." He stared at her, this girl, who had nearly died in his arms, who wielded a magic the world had never seen. "We?" She smiled faintly. "You don't get to carry the world alone, Kai." Outside, the fortress shields shimmered against the icy wind. Survivors trained with new determination. Turrets rotated. Heat surged through the pipes. The shelter was no longer hiding. It was preparing. Kai looked out at the storm, the same storm hiding the Frozen King's army, his emissaries, and whatever horrors the eternal winter had birthed. He whispered, "Let him come." The storm didn't arrive like weather. It descended as if the sky itself cracked open and poured an ocean of ice over the fortress. Winds roared with the force of giants, twisting into white spirals that swallowed the horizon. The thermal shield flickered under the pressure, its golden glow dimming as frost clawed across its surface. The temperature plummeted so violently that even the air seemed to scream. And Kai knew instantly. The Frozen King had arrived. The eternal blizzard encircled the shelter in a titanic ring, sealing every path, every escape, every breath of open air. The fortress was trapped inside a world-sized glacier, suffocating under the weight of an ancient tyrant's presence. "Heat levels dropping," a survivor shouted, panic-stricken. "Section B is frosting over. The beasts, they're changing." Kai looked out through the viewport and felt his stomach drop. The ice beasts he had fought before were nothing compared to what stalked the storm now. Their forms twisted, elongated limbs, crystalline armor, glowing cores within their chests, pulsing with frost magic. They walked like predators carved from storm itself. One roared, its voice splitting the air like splintering mountains. Kai gritted his teeth. "Ready solar cannons, target clusters, fire on my mark." The fortress thrummed. Golden beams ignited, streaking across the blizzard like miniature suns. Each blast tore through the ice beasts, vaporizing limbs, melting snow into rivers of steam. Yet the creatures kept coming. Their bodies regrew, ice reformed. Frost healed what should have been fatal wounds. Lyra raced past him toward the outer gate, eyes blazing with solar frost. Kai, mages, human ones corrupted. He followed her gaze. Figures approached through the storm, humanoid, masked, their bodies wrapped in frigid runes. Their skin shimmered with frost, eyes hollow, movement stiff and unnatural. Lyra's voice cracked. "These were my homeland's mage knights." Her hands trembled before bursting into blue-gold light. "I'm sorry," she whispered, and she charged. Solar frost spirals erupted around her, clashing with the corrupted mage's ice spells. Explosions of steam and frost tore across the battlefield as Lyra danced through them. Frost and fire fused into blinding arcs. Each step melted the ground, carving pathways through the storm's impossible cold. Kai watched her, torn between pride and dread. Because inside the control chamber, warnings flared. Solaris core temperature, critical. System integrity, failing. Overheat imminent. No, not now. If the core overheated, the thermal shield would collapse. The fortress would freeze in seconds. Everyone inside, dead. "Kai!" Lyra shouted through the comms, voice strained as she battled mages and beasts simultaneously. "We can't keep this up!" She was right. Solar beams were weakening. The shield was cracking. The core was burning itself alive. And in the swirling heart of the blizzard, a colossal silhouette moved. A crown of icicles, a cloak, of frozen storms. Eyes like dying stars. The Frozen King. Kai's breath hitched. This wasn't a battle of walls or cannons anymore. This wasn't a siege they could outlast. This was a declaration, a test, a challenge from the ancient god of winter directed at him. Kai stepped toward the gate, fists trembling not from cold, but from the crushing weight of realization. If he didn't confront the Frozen King now, if he didn't end this storm himself, everyone inside the fortress would die. His voice was steady as he whispered, "Lyra, prepare the gate. I'm going out there." Her voice broke. "Kai, no, you'll get killed." He stared into the heart of the storm, eyes hardening. "I'm the one the Frozen King wants. And if facing him means saving all of you, then I don't get to hide anymore." The wind howled as if answering him. The siege had begun, and Kai stepped forward to end it. The blizzard swallowed Kai whole the moment he stepped outside the fortress. Even with the reinforced thermal armor wrapped around his body plates, humming with Solaris energy, he felt the cold like knives slipping through every seam, every breath, every heartbeat. This was not wind, not weather. This was will. The will of a king who ruled winter itself. Kai trudged forward, each step sinking into snow that didn't behave like snow at all, too dense, too heavy, bending under unnatural pressure. It was like walking through the spine of a dying world. The storm parted suddenly, silence, white void, and a figure waiting at its heart. The Frozen King. He stood like a monument, carved from eternal ice, towering, ornate, crowned with jagged icicles that bent like twisted antlers. His body was layered crystalline armor, pulsing with ancient frost runes that flickered like dying stars. His voice cracked the air like glaciers breaking. "Child of Solaris, you walk willingly into demise." Kai tightened his grip on the improvised Solaris resonance blades, glowing strips of energy wired directly into the fragments embedded in his bones. "I didn't come to die. I came to end this." The Frozen King tilted his head, amused. "End? No. I merely continue the cycle." Frost swept outward, forming a circle around them like a ritual seal. "Every 1,000 years, humanity collapses under its own greed. I cleanse the world so it may begin anew." Kai's fists trembled, not from cold, but rage. "So all the people frozen in streets? The cities turned to graveyards?" The king's hollow eyes dimmed. It was necessary. The air shattered. The king lunged faster than a storm, heavier than a collapsing mountain. Kai barely dodged the first strike, the impact behind him erupting into a glacier spike that scraped the sky. Kai countered, slashing twin arcs of blazing gold. Solaris fragments in his arms ignited the air, cutting through frost and carving heat trails. Still, the king advanced, unhurried, unshaken. Each clash sent shockwaves rolling through the storm. Frost and fire collided, exploding into steaming debris. Kai's armor cracked, his lungs burned, his resonance blades dimmed. And then, a streak of blue-gold fire struck the king's flank. "Kai, you're not doing this alone." Lyra burst through the blizzard, solar frost blazing around her like a newborn star. Her magic rippled in spirals, cold enough to freeze light, hot enough to scorch ice. The hybrid energy tore through the storm, reshaping the battlefield with every pulse. Kai exhaled relief, adrenaline, hope mixing into something fierce. The Frozen King turned his gaze toward her. "Solar frost, the forbidden harmony." "Impossible." Lyra lifted her chin defiantly. "Then prepare to be proven wrong." They attacked together. Kai's thermal resonance synced with her solar frost, the two energies intertwining, amplifying, spiraling into destructive harmony. Their strikes became blinding arcs, heat and hybrid frost shattering the king's defenses, layer by layer. Another blow, another fracture. Cracks spread across his crystalline armor. The Frozen King roared, frost exploding outward, but the two pushed through it, refusing to fall. With a final synchronized strike, they shattered the king's armor entirely, revealing the glowing blue core inside his chest. His true heart. Kai felt the Solaris energy inside him surge wild, burning, begging to be unleashed. "Kai now!" Lyra cried. He planted his feet, channeled every fragment, every pulse, every last drop of warmth inside him, and unleashed. Solaris pulse. The explosion of radiant heat tore upward like a second sun. It ripped through the blizzard, splitting clouds, cracking the sky itself with a blinding golden fissure. The Frozen King's core screamed, fracturing, melting, collapsing under the assault. The eternal blizzard evaporated in seconds. When the light faded, The king's massive form crumbled into powdery frost, carried away by the dying wind. Kai fell to one knee, armor scorched, breath ragged. Lyra knelt beside him, placing a shaking hand on his cheek. "You did it! We did it!" Kai stared at the sky clear for the first time since the world froze. But deep inside, the Solaris core fragments trembled. This victory had awakened something else, something older, something watching. And the war for the world was far from over. The world did not melt quietly. It shuddered as though the very atmosphere was exhaling after holding its breath for decades. Kai felt it before anyone else did, a soft loosening in the air. A warmth that didn't come from the Solaris core, but from above. The eternal winter, so thick it had smothered continents, began to peel away like fragile glass. Cracks formed in the frozen sky, thin lines of gold piercing through the storm's dying shell. For the first time in a generation, light, not artificial heat, not flames, sunlight, bled through the clouds. A murmur spread across the fortress walls, then whispers, then cries. "The sky, it's changing." "Is that sunlight?" "It's warm. It's actually warm." Survivors poured out of the shelter, shielding their eyes as the first real dawn washed over them. Snowfields glistened with orange reflections, melting into trembling rivers. Frost cracked and fell from rooftops. The world, once silent and suffocating, breathed again. Lyra stood at the rampart, tears slipping down her cheeks, steaming as they hit the warm air. This is what we were fighting for. But behind her, Kai staggered. The last remnants of the frozen king's power, the lingering curse of eternal winter, surged into him like a tide. His knees buckled, steam rising from his skin as Solaris fragments embedded in his body absorbed the dying cold. "Kai!" Lyra screamed, rushing to his side. His vision blurred, his breath rattled. Ice crawled across his veins from the inside, thin lines of frost threading through his arms, his chest creeping toward his heart. He felt the curse whispering, trying to claim him the way it had claimed countless others. "I broke the Frozen King, but he's trying to break me with him." Kai collapsed fully, the world dimming into streaks of melting white. Survivors panicked. "Is he dying? Someone help him! He saved us. Don't let him die like this." But Lyra didn't panic. She placed her hands on his chest, solar frost magic igniting in a brilliant burst. The hybrid element born from her frozen heart and tempered by the Solaris core surrounded Kai in spirals of blue and gold. Solar warmth, frost purity, two opposing forces, joined in perfect harmony. Light poured into Kai's body, clashing with the winter curse in a violent explosion of heat and ice. The ground shook, steam blasted outward, as if a volcano had erupted beneath the fortress. Lyra gritted her teeth, tears streaming. "Stay with me, Kai. You didn't fight all this way just to leave now." Her magic flared brighter, overwhelming the frost, melting the curse thread by thread. And Kai's heartbeat returned. Slow, weak, but alive. His eyes fluttered open. Lyra laughed through her sobs and pulled him into a trembling embrace. "You idiot! Don't scare me like that." Kai managed to smile. "I wasn't planning to die today." Around them, survivors cheered again louder than before, voices carrying across the thawing plains. Some fell to their knees, some raised their arms, some simply cried into the warming air, because the world had not seen dawn in decades, because the sun felt like an impossible miracle, because this day, this sunrise meant humanity had survived the cold that was meant to erase them. Kai stood slowly, leaning on Lyra as the first fully formed sunbeam pierced the clouds and washed over their faces. "Look," he whispered. The melt of dawn spread across the horizon, blinding, beautiful, alive. Humanity's first sunrise wasn't just light. It was a rebirth, a promise. And Kai felt it deep in his bones. This was only the beginning of the world he would help rebuild.